Hey everyone, Nino's issued a challenge to edit a photo of Briana and put it up on Instagram. And I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to show you guys how I edit an entire image. So we're going to start out in Capture One. I'm going to show you my process there. And then we're going to move over into Photoshop and I'm going to show you my process of editing an entire image in Photoshop. This is going to be a long video, so buckle up, but you should take away a lot of different pieces from this and hopefully you learn something. All right, so now you can see we're in Capture One. This is a great photo that Nino sent. So what I like to do is I typically like to flatten an image out quite a bit. So I always kind of start out by reducing contrast quite a bit, somewhere between like 10 and 15. I think on this image, somewhere right around 10, maybe 15. So let's see. A little bit before and after check, you can see a little bit of reduction there. I also like to take and pull my highlights and just kind of flatten them down some. And then I'll go in, lift the shadows just a little bit. So 10 or 15 here. Blacks, I'll also lift those slightly to get a little more detail back in the shadow. I like to build a lot of contrast back in later in Photoshop. So I don't do a ton of heavy lifting in Capture One, but I do like to just kind of start out here and do some baseline stuff. So clarity adds in some of that micro contrast. I'll probably do it right around, let's see, 5. 5 to 10 looks good, maybe 10. Let's play with the dehaze. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. On this image, I don't think it's really needed. So we'll leave dehaze at 0. The white balance looks pretty good overall. I might warm it up just a little bit to 58, and I like right around 5800 a lot of times. So as you can see, we've already done a little bit to it. Not a lot, but I'll click on the before and after tab up here. But if you look right now, there's the original and then after. So you can see we really pulled up some of the detail in her hair. We flattened out some of that contrast a little bit. And we might mask a couple things in here and play with stuff a little bit more. So let's keep going. Let's see. I might lift her eyes just a little bit. That can get real unnatural if you're not careful. But let's see. Increase exposure in them just a little bit. So right around 0.1, 0.1, 0.11. If you hit the M key on your keyboard, that'll let you see the mask on and off in Capture One. And it's just subtle. It's not a lot. Might bring up the black slightly, get a little more detail in her iris. Let's see. There we go. Shadow actually lifted her irises up just a little bit more. Now let me look at it. Yeah, I don't think that's overdone. I like to pull the opacity back on the layer slider and kind of go from there. But I mean, overall, this is actually really nice. If you look at the histogram, it's a pretty balanced image. Let me see. Play with brightness a little bit, see if I want to brighten it up just a smidge. So I did brightness plus 10. It feels like a little too much. Let's go back to 5. Let's take a look at it. So super subtle what we did. You can see on her collar, get a little more detail. A lot more detail in the hair. And I kind of think that's a good baseline. I mean, again, I don't do a ton in Capture One. I know you can do color grading and skin grading and stuff like that, but I do pretty much all of that in Photoshop later. So I'm gonna go ahead and export this. I always export it as a PSB and RGB. I know there's plenty of arguments over Adobe 98 and P3 and everything else. Most of my printers print in sRGB, so I don't bother doing anything in a bigger color space. I just start out in sRGB. All right, so we're going to export the one image. Let's check the folder, see if it's there. There it is. All right, so now we're going to open this up in Photoshop. And here we go. So now we're in Photoshop. And what I'm going to do is I always start out by getting rid of just any kind of blemishes or imperfections or little things that I don't like that much. So what I'm going to do is Control-Alt-Shift-N to create a brand new layer. or Control Shift, no. All right, now that this is open in Photoshop, the first thing I'm going to do is create a new layer. Oh, hold on. It's going to open. Pause. All right, now that this image is open in Photoshop, the first thing I'm going to do is create a new layer. So Control Alt Shift N, and that's going to give you a new blank layer. And I use this layer to just clean up any blemishes, distractions, anything like that. I like the remove tool quite a bit. So you'll see over here on the left side of the panel, you'll see the little, almost looks like a Band-Aid with 2 stars. That's the tool that I like to use. And then I also use an editing tablet to increase and change my brush size instead of the keyboard. So I like to zoom in and just start getting rid of some of the things that I find distracting. I do a lot of stray hair removal. This is totally up to you whether or not this is something you want to do, but I like to do it. I just got that off of there so I could see her pupil or see her eye just a little bit better, her pupil and her iris. A little bigger. Good. Come down here, get some of these distracting hairs off the face. So this really is kind of a tedious process, but it's one of those things that I feel like takes a good image from good to great, and then just kind of gives you something that's really pretty. It gets rid of a lot of the little distractions that you see. And we'll zoom out here in just a second to kind of see what it looks like. All right, clean up that right there. Let's zoom back out. Turn the layer on, turn the layer off to kind of get a look. All right, let's zoom back in. And if you don't know, you can just hit Control plus and Control minus to zoom in and out of a photo. And if you hit Control 0, that will actually take the image back out to just fit the screen. And Control 1 will zoom in to 100%. So those are just some fast keyboard shortcuts for you if you don't know them. And we will keep just kind of getting rid of some of these distracting hairs. So I'm going to come over here, clean this one off of her lip. See down along her face. And this is a great messy hair look from Nino. I just like to kind of clean off some of the things that distract away from how pretty the model's face is. So let's see. That little distraction there. Come back out. So I think we did a good job cleaning up kind of around the face or on the cheeks. Let me come back in on this eye just a little bit more. There's such pretty eyeshadow here that I'm going to eliminate some of the distractions on that. Zoom back out. All right, I'm going to go in now and just kind of get rid of some of the strays that are within her hair itself. Obviously, I'm not going to do everything because it's going to take forever, but I'm going to spend some time just kind of cleaning those up a little bit. And I like to switch which brush I'm using. So again, if you come over here, you're going to see you've got the remove tool, the healing brush tool, the spot healing brush, content aware, and patch tool. In the hair itself, a lot of times I'll use the spot healing brush tool just because it doesn't take quite as long as the remove tool does. And you can either use your keyboard to select it by hitting Shift J and cycle through the different options, or you can just take and go over there with your mouse and click it. So let's move in on her hair here. And really what I'm doing is I'm going after the ones that are super distracting. So a lot of times the ones that are bright that really just kind of pull my eye towards it more are going to be some of the ones that I'll clean up. And again, this is a time-consuming process, but I think whenever you're building an image, especially if you're doing a contest with it, like if you want to enter into a photo competition, it's these kind of details that really do make a difference. Let's keep coming in here. And I admittedly am one of those people, I can really get lost in the details when it comes to editing a photo. So I have to keep an eye on myself a lot of times. I can hyperfixate and get in and really work on stuff that isn't that big of a deal. I'm really bad in dodge and burning when we get there here shortly, but you will see that this does start to build a more cohesive image, and that's why I do it. We come in here, keep working on some of these little strays. I'm going to turn the layer on and off here in just a second to kind of give you guys a preview of what just doing this does. I mean, it really does help clean up the image. It does help with distractions. Let's go back here. Let's take a look at it. So layer on, layer off. And you can already see how many little distractions in the image we have cleaned off to help bring the detail or bring the focal point back to the center of the image. So let's go in here. I saw some other ones while I was doing this and cleaning things up. And this is a really cool look that they put together. So it's a little crazy. It's a little chaotic with the loose hairs, but you know what? It adds something. So let's keep going. Just gonna edit down some more of these. I noticed these over on her cheek when I keep zooming out. So I'm gonna go back to the remove tool just because I feel like it does a little bit better whenever there's other textures around. And I leave mine, if you look up here, you can see where it says generative AI off. You can leave that off, on, or auto. I find for most of the stuff like this and little blemish removal, just leaving generative AI off makes it work better and makes it work faster. And it doesn't really need the AI functions a lot of times. Every once in a while you need it, but I have found for simplicity and speed's sake that using it with it off is where I like it most of the time. It is a great tool, though. Keep getting rid of some of these. You can see it kind of, there we go. Come in here. Keep cleaning off some of these little hairs that just distract. This one's catching my eye. Let's get rid of that. And boom. Man, this remove tool really, I think, was one of the best updates they did for the healing brush. So let's look at this. Yeah, look how much of a difference that made. Just getting rid of those really bright strays in different places. There's some more right here that I'm going to get rid of. Let's knock that out. Let's clean all this up in here just a little bit. And a trick that I learned a long time ago is you can also, if you've got hairs that you don't necessarily want to get rid of because you like the way they look, but let's say like this one right here that you can kind of see, I'll turn my cursor up, this one here, it doesn't look bad there, but it's a little bright. So you can actually take a brush and go down to a flow of like 1%. Hit Alt on your keyboard to pick a color close by. And then you can actually come, if you're at a really low flow like that, and just kind of paint over it a little bit. It's not going to be super noticeable, but it takes and it knocks down that brightness just a little bit, and it doesn't look unnatural. Let's go there. So if I turn this off, back on, it's subtle, but it did darken it down just a little bit. Hold on, let's see if to stay close in. There you go. So you can see right here in the center area of the screen, if I turn the layers off right now, I turn it on, it darkened it down just a little bit. And it's one of those little subtle things that sometimes just really helps whenever I'm looking at an image that kind of has some distractions. I think I'm going to clean up these last couple little loose ends here. And then I think overall, I'm pretty happy with the stray hair cleanup. Come in and clean out that one. Get rid of that guy. That one. Let's go back. All right, I think that looks good there. See two others that I want to get rid of real fast. This one, perfect. And then, yeah, that right across here. Get rid of that guy. And I think I might use that paintbrush trick right in here just to tone down the brightness of these couple of strands. I don't want to get rid of them because I like how they look, but I do want to color them down just a little bit just so they're not so noticeable. And again, this is all subtle. So if you're still pretty new to editing, it really can take time for you to start seeing the subtle shifts in darkness and lightness and color. It really does take a while for your eye to just fully get trained to it. You know, there's some things that I'll do later in this that 3 years ago, my eye just wasn't good enough yet to really notice. So if you're new at it, don't get discouraged if you don't see the difference when you're starting to do some of these things. It really just kind of comes with time as you continue to work on photos. So we're back all the way out. Let's take a look at it again, before, after. Yeah, I think overall that's a really good base cleanup. Maybe get rid of just these couple down here too. Probably do that a lot whenever I edit is, oh yeah, I'm done with this. And then you see just one more thing. Oh, no, didn't do what I wanted. There we go. Get rid of that. And you can see here, sometimes the remove tool pops up with that little box and it just is a little slower. So that's where sometimes using the spot healing brush works quicker. And 90% of the time is equally as good. Sometimes with textures, it's not quite as good as it is if you use the remove tool. But I think we're at a good point here with this. So the next thing I like to do is I'm going to stamp everything that's visible. So Control Alt Shift E. And if you're on a Mac, use the Command key, I think in place of Control. I'm on a Windows-based computer. So now what I like to do is, after that is stamped, you see that new layer here. I like to convert it to a smart object because the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move into Liquify. And in Liquify, if you have this as a smart object, you can go back in and make adjustments if you don't like what you did. So Control Shift X will take you into Liquify, and here we are in Liquify. So what I like to do with Liquify is just kind of enhance things a little bit. A lot of times when I first started out, I would get in with a really itty bitty little brush like this for Liquify, and I didn't like it. It was really difficult to deal with, but if you take and kind of increase the size a little bit, it does a better job. And then sometimes I like to use it to just kind of give hair a little bit more volume in places, right? It's can be subtle. You can also take the bloat tool and come in on some of the curls and just kind of, yep, there we go. You can give the curls a little bit more volume in places. So I like to do it just kind of at the bend of a curl where it's gotten bigger. And then you can just kind of come in and do that. Sometimes just a little tweak of the jawline if it needs it. This is a really good crop, and Brie is beautiful. I don't feel like you have to do a whole lot. So, I mean, this is really subtle, right? Like I just gave the hair just a little bit more volume in a couple of places and just kind of edged her jawline up slightly right here. I think, honestly, I'm happy with that. I'll hit OK. Come back out. I'll zoom back out a little bit just to see what I think. Yeah, I like the extra little bit of volume we gave it on the sides of her hair. It's subtle. It's nothing crazy. All right, now that we've done with our Liquify layer, we're going to run NBP's Skin Texture Pro 4. I used to use SKN, but that panel actually no longer works. So this is going to be my first time using this action set from Nino. So you get to kind of move along with me on it. All right, so it's loading. We'll see how long it takes to run this whole layer stack. It's spinning, it's spinning. Still spinning. I know when I watched his YouTube video, he said it may take a minute, but bam, done pretty quick. All right, so let's take a look at everything here. So we've got some manual smoothing layers, some broad texture layers. So let's go in I like the texture we've got here, but let's go to the fine texture layer and the contrast of it and decrease the contrast some to remove a little bit of that. All right, there we go. We can do a bunch of it. And he likes it a little higher sometimes. I think I'm going to do it. I think I like that right around 15. Let's see. So from 30 to 15, it's just a little softer look there. Let's go down to the broad contrast and see if there's anything we really want to mess with here or not. We can bring it up some, brings back that normal kind of skin texture. I don't think I'm going to do it as aggressively as he had it, but maybe, I think somewhere down around 27. Then we come into the secondary smoothing. We turn that off, turn it back on. I like it at about 10. All right. And then there's some manual smoothing options here. So let's see. There's a couple things in here I think I want to clean up. So let's put the brush on maybe 10%. I'm going to use a soft round. Let's see, like this area over here. Let's see if we can clean this up a little bit. Nice. A little bit on these transitional spots. So this is just giving me the ability to smooth out some of these color transitions manually. It's going to also be done in frequency separation, which we'll probably do some of here in a little bit, but it's kind of a cool place to start. Like I said, I haven't used this action set yet, so this is a first run for me on it as well. So it's pretty cool. Actually, I just started doing this, but I probably should check the accuracy of the mask first. So I like to use quick mask mode by hitting the backslash key. I know it's not the most accurate form of masking like to check, but for what I do most of the time, it seems to work fine. And the thing that I don't like whenever you hit, like if you come out of a quick mask and you hold down Alt and click on the actual mask itself, like this is cool. I like it, but I can't see where the hell the edges are and it's hard for me to visualize. So I really just kind of prefer to do it in quick mask mode most of the time. Nino might yell at me for that, but it's okay. Everybody does things a little differently, right? One of the things I've learned editing in Photoshop is there are multiple ways to skin a cat. So we're going to come in here. We're just going to kind of clean this mask up just a little bit more in certain spots. Overall, did a really good job of selecting the texture. It did grab or selecting the colors. It did grab a little bit of this jacket. We'll just paint back over that so that it perfects it. Come in here because I saw that it didn't get all of this skin down in here because there's a lot of hairs kind of mixed in there. Nope, that's more hair than it is skin. So we'll kind of come in along here. I tend to be a little overly anal on mass. It might be a bad thing, might be a good thing. I don't know. But we're just going to kind of come in, hit these spots. And your mileage may vary, right? You may not be quite as anal on mass. I'm just a little OCD about these things. So, you know, come in, try it, do it, see what you think. Yeah. Oh, other than that, let me clean it up just a little bit under here too. I'll come in right there. I might, when we do our color adjustments here in a second, I might mask back over her eyeshadow just so that it doesn't mess with the colors too much. All right, so we did our textures. Is there really anything in here I need to paint? Maybe right here. Let's select the brush tool by hitting B. If you want a quick shortcut for changing your flow, if you hold down Shift and then hit any of the numbers, so Shift 1 would make it a 10% flow, Shift 2 would make it a 20% flow. Or if you want something like, say, a 3% flow, you hit 2 numbers in succession. So hold Shift and hit 0, 3, and it'll make a quick 3% flow adjustment. And I use that a lot. And then you're going to come in here and you're just going to sample near that area, and you're going to keep sampling, and you just paint it. And you do this a lot on frequency separation layers too, to kind of paint into things, but it's pretty, but it's pretty cool that you can do it on this action. And it's got kind of it built into the layer stack where you can come in and paint like this, almost like you're in frequency separation. It's pretty cool. Let's see where else, anywhere. Maybe this right here into these highlights, and it's kind of bends in her neck. I could do this in dodge and burn, but if I can paint over it and it looks decent, then let's do that too. Come in here, maybe just a little bit in there. Like I said, we'll come in and dodge and burn and do some more, or in frequency separation and do some more in here, and then we'll probably do a little bit of dodge and burn as well. We'll fade that last brush stroke, so Control Shift F. I don't like how much I knocked down that highlight right there, so we'll do that. Let's come back out. You know, I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit more and see how things look so far. Like the amount of smoothing we've done, some of the paint may actually, I'll probably fix that in frequency separation. And then hue uniformity is at 20. Start all the way down for a second. If we go all the way up, you can see it kind of really flattens everything out. So let me look. 20 is not bad. Let me come up around 30. Let me see how that looks. Actually, there's 30. So let's see. Let's go back down to 25. And I think I'm going to throw a mask on top of this and paint over, use the black paintbrush, and I'm going to paint over her cheeks right here where her makeup was, just so we don't lose some of that makeup color. That makeup color is actually really pretty right there. Kind of dig it. And I guess if I really wanted to, yeah, I think that looks good. Let's see, from there to there where we get that redness back. I actually think I'm going to paint back over it just slightly. We'll tone it down just a little bit, but not a lot. So I'm basically just kind of decreasing the opacity of the mask. Might have done it just a little too much. Add a stroke back. Let's look at it before and after. Yeah. All right, there we go. So we've got some of that color still left in her cheeks. Feel like some of our smoothing might be a little overdone. So let's come to manual smoothing. Let's back that up just a little bit. Secondary smoothing, I think I'm still okay with. This paint section. So let's turn that all the way down and then just kind of dial it back in softly. And I do this a lot with layers. I will take and use them, and I'll do, especially if I'm painting in colors, I'll do it a little heavy-handed, and then I'll dial down the opacity of the layer just because it allows me to really fine-tune everything, honestly. HSL adjust, I'm kind of okay with her tones there. I think it looks all right. Luma compression. Well, let's see. Do we want any Luma compression? It was set at 10 as a default. That's at 0. Turn it on, turn it off. I don't mind it at 10. I think it looks good. And then let's come up here to linear contrast. So I tend to like a fairly contrasty image. And this is kind of an overall linear contrast amount. So down at 0, Nino had it at 25 originally. Kind of like it right there around 30, honestly. Let's look at that. Yeah. Yeah, that gave it a lot more life. I'm digging that. Now, so there's before, there's after. Let's dial this back just a little bit, maybe around 80% for the entire layer stack. Let's see. Yeah, that gives a lot more natural feel to it, right? That little bit, maybe even down to 75, 73. Yeah, that's much more natural looking right there. All right, so I'm happy with that. So let's do that. Now let's come back over to the actions and we're going to run Skin Depth Pro 2 and see how this goes. The old SKN panel that I used to use did all of this same kind of stuff in a user interface, but this is now all in a layer stack and it gives you more control, Nino said. So it can be intimidating. I mean, as you can see, there's a ton of layers, but it's really not that bad. And as you get into it more and more, you can kind of play with it. So you may see me messing around with some of the things because, again, this is my first time using it. So today is kind of a fun day of just figuring it out together. Let's double check this mask. All right, so it's still there. I'm going to pull the mask from the previous layer stack. So if you hold down Alt and click on the layer mask, you can actually drag that layer mask up or around. Sometimes it hangs like that, like it just did, but if you, there you go. And you can drag it. So again, click Alt, click on the layer mask and drag it to the layer that you want, and it'll actually create, it'll duplicate that layer mask. So now you can actually see, look, it corrected the mask because it copied it up from the other one. So it's just kind of a nice thing to be able to do if you're working on the same spot. If you perfect your layer mask on one layer stack, then just copy it over to the next layer stack, and that makes life a little easier. All right, so we'll come out of there. So let's look at everything. So if we feel like we want to give her a little bit of tan, we could come into that mid-tones, and in the saturation, we come to the brightness. Yep. What do we just do? Cancel. All right, there we go. So saturation at 0. Let's go to the cancel. Let's go to the brightness here. And if we pull the brightness down, you can see we can kind of introduce a little bit more of a tan. So we were at 50. I think we'll pull the midtones back to like 46. It's subtle. I don't want to go wild with it. A lot of things I have learned the longer I edit is subtlety is important, right? So let's go highlights. Let's see where we are. So that's brightness at 100. Here we go. Let's do a little bit of a gradient map color wash. I've got a lot of Nino's color gradients here. So let's see. Skin tones. It's got a lot more red in it. You just kind of play around until you find something that you like the look of. And then we can also adjust the opacity of it later. I think I like that one. It's on soft light. Blend mode's 30, or the blend mode is soft light. Sorry, the opacity is 30. You could probably change this over to overlay as well if you want, or even color. It's gonna be a little more subtle, but we'll leave it on soft light. I think I'm gonna dial that back some, maybe up around 15. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, just a subtle grade. Again, I found I like subtlety more than anything. Now let's look at the highlight boost here, right? So got the highlights pulled back, or the levels pulled back for the highlights to really give us that pop. And we'll do it a little bit more. And then we're going to come over here, double click the side for the blend if, and then we can adjust how much of the highlights are actually being targeted on this image. So you got some sheen on her face. I want to get a little bit more of the arm highlights there. Hit OK. And then I'm going to turn this opacity all the way off and just slowly dial in a little bit of it. At 30%, that actually feels like too much. Let's come down. Let's see what it looks like at 10. Again, super subtle. Maybe go up to 12. I like that. All right. I'm not going to mess with the HSL on the highlights or the shadow. Actually, on the highlights, I might just slightly. So let's go to brightness. Pull some of that back a little bit. Just a couple of notches. It tones down that face a little bit. And actually, I'm going to come back to the boost here and maybe bump it back up slightly. So let's see where we're at. Yeah, I'm digging that. Overall shaping. So let's look at the high tones and the low tones here. What all's being done? Again, kind of new on this one, so I'm playing with some of the sliders just to see what stuff does. I watched a video on this from Nino, but sometimes you forget there's a lot involved. Let me see if I can figure out what all we're doing here. Oh, it'd probably help if I actually turn that group on. There we go. Now we can see what it's doing. All right. So if we increase, we get more shadows. If we come to the high tones and we decrease it. Okay, so there we go. So it's giving us just control the boost of the highs and the lows. I'm going to pull the high tones all the way back to start with. Let's get into the shadows. So let's create a little bit more depth in the shadows. Like I said, I like contrasty images. I think right around 40 gives a really nice depth underneath her chin. It really adds a little more drama. We'll come in here. Let's play with this. We're going to dial that way back. Let's do 10 on the high tones. Yeah, nice and subtle. Overall contrast. Do we feel like we need more contrast in this image? I add in a lot more contrast later. So let's come in here. Let's just do this right at about 10. Again, it's subtle, but we're layering the contrast on. That's one of the things I really like with all of this, is just the subtle abilities to layer things on. Come in here to the DSAT at 100%, you can see it's pretty severe. I just want to, what the hell did we just do? There we go. Let's turn DSAT back on. All right, let's pull the opacity all the way back on that. And then I'm going to run it up to about 6%, 8%, I think. Just takes a little bit of that redness out that got introduced back in. All right, so let's take a look at this. See, before, after. So you can see we created a lot more shaping with everything here. And that little bit of color grade. I think I'm going to take and dial this back just a little bit, though. I don't think I want it all at 100%. So now we're at 78. Still pretty stout. Let's go back to 65. There we go. That looks more believable. And it doesn't look like it messed with the colors of her eyeshadow much. So boom, now we've kind of gone, now we've got that. So if you want to see what it originally looked like, you can come down here to the background layer where that little eye is and hold down Alt and click on the eye. And that's the original image we started with. This is where we are right now. So before, now. Pretty big improvement overall. It was a great image to start with, quite frankly, but I'm digging where it's going. So now that we've done both of those, I'm going to come over. Sorry, FC3 doesn't work anymore. So we're going to go back over here to my default actions. And I'm going to run a frequency separation action that I built. It's kind of the same as everybody else's. I like to use median for this. Come in here. And then you can adjust your radius. If you do something crazy, it gets kind of ridiculous. I have found for portraits, I like somewhere between like 10 and 12. We'll just land on 11. It smooths, you can see it smooths out just enough without getting too crazy. So yeah, I think 11. So hit OK. All right. So now the way I set mine up, I've actually got 2 clipping masks of these layers. So I duplicated the low layer and the high layer just so I can independently kind of adjust them. So now that we've got the low layer copy going, let's get our mixer brush. So Shift B will cycle through your brushes. And then you can see up here, my wet, my load, and my mix are all at 30%. My flow, I usually keep around 30% as well. And then you're just going to come in on this low copy layer. And this is where I kind of just blend in color transitions, right? And again, it might be a little heavy-handed at first, but that's how we can go back in later or we can go back in later and just adjust the opacity, and then it's not quite so heavy. And if you mess up on a brush and you need to go back, just hit Control Z. I think Command Z on a Mac, but that will allow you to just undo the last thing you just did. So nothing too crazy. Let's go in here. We're still painting, and you want to make sure that sample all layers is turned off for this one. Otherwise you're going to get it pulling texture because the texture layer is on, and then it's going to create some funky issues. So just come in here. And again, if it looks a little over smoothed and a little over processed, that's fine, because we're going to fine tune it here in just a second. And this is really kind of doing what that manual smoothing was doing on the last layer stack with Nino's panel, or with Nino's layer stack, but just kind of gives me a little bit more control inside of frequency separation. So I'll tone down that highlight on her nose. She's got some strong highlights on her chin and cheeks. She's kind of got that oily sheen look to her there a little bit. I'm going to push a little bit of this cheek color back towards that hot spot, and we're probably going to fix some of the texture on that here in a second. All right, so let's go all the way back out. Let's go one step back from all the way out. And so you can see off, on. You can see how much blending we just did on those colors on her face. And obviously it's a little extreme. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to work on this just a little bit more too. And you can see there's texture in there that we need to fix, but that's not the end of the world. We can fix that here in a second. All right. And then what I like to do, I'm a boudoir photographer, so I tend to probably have things a little smoother than your commercial folks do. But whenever I do this layer that I kind of paint in with the mixing brush, I always like to dial it back to about 69, somewhere between 65 and 70%. And that way it looks a little more realistic than it does. If you look again all the way to 100, it's really smoothed off. I actually may go back a little lower than 70 on this image. I may go down to like 60 right here. And now you can kind of see we blended those color transitions, but she doesn't look completely plastic, right? Then we'll come up here to this high layer. We're going to select our healing brush tool. And with that, again, just hit Shift J and you can kind of cycle through all of them. And then let's do a little bit of texture fixing here. So I'm going to clean up. Actually, I'm going to come down here. It's more aggressive. We're going to smooth out some of this texture right here on her chin from those highlights. And then Control Shift F, and I'm going to fade that brush down. So I like to bring it usually around 25 to 30% because it's just enough where it smooths some of that texture out, but it doesn't make it look like plastic. So there was before, completely smoothed out, 30%. It just kind of knocks down some of that texture. I'm not looking to make her completely plastic right there. I just want to kind of make it a little bit of a finer smoothing of the texture there. So even the same thing here on the cheeks with this highlight. It's really high. Control Shift F again. Pull it all the way down and then just start blending it up until I like how that looks. Yeah. So from here to there, it's subtle. It's just a soft fixing of texture. It's just fixing it down just a little bit to where it's not so apparent, where the pores are just a little softer looking. And I like sharp images. I like a lot of texture, but sometimes on the face, and actually I probably could have done it on that other layer stack where I could have painted on the mask to have not pulled quite so much face texture out. But hey, we're doing it this way. So again, it's just little minor adjustments, right? Just cleaning it up to my liking. Your liking may be completely different. You may not want any skin smoothing, and that's totally cool. I'm just showing you what I do. I'm gonna come back down again, maybe up this one just a little bit more. Not that high, too high. You can kind of go in and paint some color there. All right, so to give you an idea of the difference, off, back on. Super subtle, but again, so much of this, I think so many new photographers and new editors, when they first start playing with something like frequency separation, they get in there and they blast all the texture off. I was really bad about that in the beginning. And now it's more learning the finesse, learning how to be a little more subtle in areas, making some of those textures smoother, knocking down some of those pores, some of those highlights. And it really depends on the person, right? Some people, have got big pores, some people got little pores. So it really just kind of depends. So now that I'm kind of happy actually, I am going to fix a little bit more of the texture right here. I'm going to fade that down. 28. And just do a little bit more right in here. Fade that down as well. 22 looks fine. I'll come and hit this spot on the chin right here on the edge. Maybe a little more than 25. 37. All right. So again, still not finished, not perfect, but look, we've toned down some of that texture in the highlights, and then that's going to allow me to come in here on this color layer, pick my paintbrush, go down to like a 3% flow, pick an area nearby, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint some color up into this highlight and tone that down just a little bit, where she's not quite so aggressively shiny right there. Maybe even brush back in a little bit of pink from the before, after. It actually bled over a little bit onto this nostril, so I'm just going to kind of erase a little bit of that color there. It's one of the nice things is, you're working on a layer stack. So if you want to see some of your color, you can do it there. You can see where I've painted right here in the center. And now what I like to do again is adjust the opacity. I'll bring it all the way down, and then I just kind of slowly build it back up until I land where I like it. Sometimes it's at 100%, but it's usually not. It's usually somewhere in between 60 to 70. And again, that's allowing me to preserve a little bit of that highlight in there. But as you can see, if I turn it off, you can see there's highlight there, a little darker here. And now it's kind of evened out that color transition a little bit. I'm going to do another layer, Control Alt Shift N. It will just give me a whole new blank layer, and I'm going to come and do it. I do a bunch of layers in this spot in frequency separation with colors so that I can come in and just kind of paint in targeted areas. And then that way I don't have to worry about, oh, well, the opacity should be a little bit lower here and a little higher there, and then it gets all wonky. I can come in and do each area independently. And if you want to name those, you totally can. I mean, like chin color works. And then look, now I'm going to dial it back, and then I'm going to slowly add it back in until I get what I want. I'll come down around 30 because I like that little bit of highlight there. I just didn't want it quite as bright as it was. And that knocked it down slightly. Let's see here. I'm going to add a little bit of color back in on the nose. Let's come right here. Let's add a little bit back into that. Create a little bit of contrast there. Fix some of this. Blend that over on top of that a little bit. Just makes the color transitions look a little smoother. And again, we may take and dial this back slightly. Let's get rid of some of that hot spot right there. And this is what's great about frequency separation, right? You can come in and really just make those little minor adjustments and paint color and still keep your texture and not blow your texture out. All right, so let's come back here. See how this looks. about 76%. And overall, I mean, that's not a bad, wow, look at the difference. So from there to there, and it doesn't really look fake. You know, some people might say it does, but I like it. I like the blended colors, the blended transitions a little bit. And I could always dial this back if I wanted to. Come down to like 79%. Yeah, pretty realistic looking. There's still some color differences here, or lights and dark differences here, which I'm probably just going to do in dodge and burn here in a second. So I'm going to save this as we're going, just because, God forbid, Photoshop decides to crash. I don't want to deal with that. But yeah, so now we're going to run a dodge and burn action. It's an action that I built. I'll explain it to you after I run it. Here it is. So there's multiple different ways to do dodge and burn, right? A lot of people like to do it with curves. A lot of people like to do it with a soft light layer. I've used both. I'm kind of back to using a soft light layer again. I used to use a curves layer a lot, or two curves layers, but I got tired of having to click back and forth between the two different layers. This one works really well with my ADD. All I have to do is flip-flop back and forth between a white and a black paint for the brush, and it works perfectly. As you can see, the image is currently black and white. I have a black and white layer. It just allows you to see the transitions of the colors a little bit better, or the highlights and the shadows. And then there's a contrast helper stack, which is just a curve here, or a contrast helper layer. It's just a curves layer, and basically it just increases the contrast in certain areas to help you see things better if you need to. So to start this, hit the letter D on your keyboard, and that will make your swatches go back to just black and white. And then if you press X, it'll flip them back and forth between black and white. You want a soft round brush, so hardness at 20%. I usually do my opacity at 100 and my flow at 1. It's a little more subtle, takes a little more time, but it also gives me a lot more control. So now we're just going to come in and we're just going to start dodging and burning, right? And kind of even some of this stuff out, and make sure you adjust your brush size as you go throughout it. You can go smaller and bigger. You can use your keyboard. You can hit the bracket keys. It's over near your backslash to increase and decrease the size of your brushes if you don't have an editing tablet. But I've got an editing tablet with a knob on it, so I just spin the knob as I go, and it makes my life a million times easier. Come in here. I remember seeing this earlier. Now, you might have seen my previous video, but if you didn't, during dodge and burn, I really like to rotate the image because it allows me to kind of keep an up and down movement with my wrist instead of having to do side to side the whole time. So if you hold down R on the keyboard, you'll see this little hand and a square and an arrow, and then you just spin the image in any direction you want. And this is great, especially like I said, with dodge and burn, when you're working on wrinkles in different areas, you can rotate the image instead of having to move the angle of your hand. And to me, it really feels like it's just saved my wrist a lot of strain. So we're gonna come in here. Now, dodge and burn is one of those things where you can get lost in the sauce for hours. Absolutely hours. My big recommendation with dodge and burn is to back out of the image on a regular basis and really see what you see, right? Because nobody's going to be looking at the image at 100% or 200%. They're going to look at it as a cohesive overall image. And if you're in here dodging and burning something at 400% and you've realized you spent an hour doing it and it makes no difference to the image, then what the hell was the point, right? So let's turn off the black and white layer. You can already see right here in this area with it off and on how we've kind of smoothed out some of that transitions, right? We've kind of made the skin look a little better, a little more even in tonality. And if you get a color shift, right, and it happens sometimes, especially if you're really aggressively dodging and burning something, you're going to get a shift in color. You're going to get a kind of a, if you've been dodging a really dark wrinkle or dark line, it's going to pull kind of more orangey red. And what you can do is, you can see here, I've got a color layer. It's just a blank layer set to color blend mode. And then you can actually go in and paint some color back in, and it'll fix that. It's Probably not exactly perfect all the time, but it gets the job done and does a pretty damn good job overall. There are some more advanced ways to do it with like chroma luma layers and things like that. But that gets really technical really quick. So I have found for my workflow, this really works well. Come down in here into her neck. And let's just balance this out. I watched a video several years ago. Christina Shirk, I think is how you pronounce her last name, from Shark Pixel, basically just said all wrinkles are light pixels next to dark pixels. And that really kind of helped change my way of looking at dodging and burning. And, you know, she had like, I think it was her, maybe it was Nino, that talked about if you could take something that looked like, you know, take a wrinkled shirt and dodge and burn until you made it look like it was flat. It really teaches you a lot about dodge and burn and how to do these things. And definitely does, but it is time consuming. So you can see here, we're just kind of fixing some of those marks under her neck and the tone shifts. I'm just trying to blend it together to where everything looks a little more natural. Come in over here. Got a couple spots on the arm that I don't like that I'm going to fix. And again, this is personal preference of how far in the weeds you get on this. I tend to obsess over the details and get way too deep into things, but that's just me. That's kind of my personality. This hot spot on this piece of metal, I'm going to burn down slightly. It's going to be super subtle because it's such a bright spot, but let's take a look. So we're here. So stack off, stack back on. We cleaned up a bunch of this here. There's still some more stuff I clean up there. Her neck looks a lot better too. Just those kind of natural bends you get in people's necks. Let me come in here. We'll work on this area a little bit more. Unevenness there. Just working on blending this down some more. Just again, it's all these little details, and it's all in your preference of how you want to do these things. You just keep going. Burning this down a little bit. I don't know if you guys can hear the footsteps that just came in. My basset hound decided he wanted to bust in my office door and come see what the hell I was doing. So sorry about that, but he kind of does what he wants. If anybody watching has a basset hound, we all know they call him a bass hole for a reason. And he is definitely a bass hole. Keep doing that there. I mean, man, this looks pretty damn good overall. I might go and paint a little bit of color in. A couple spots over here in just a second. Let's pull that black and white off. Let's hit color, about a 3% flow. I'm just going to kind of come and even some of that out just a little bit right there where we were burning and dodging. Man, it's great from a editing standpoint. Brie doesn't have a lot of wrinkles, so it's not a lot of work in dodge and burn, honestly, to smooth those things out. But I am going to soften this up just a little bit more. Right here, this big shadow. Really looking good. All right, now we're going to keep just kind of going through here. Let's do this. Just kind of even all that out, those transitions there. And overall, this is looking quite good. Let's turn black and white back off. Zoom out a little bit to there. Before, after. And I can see just a touch here where I need to come in. And this is where zooming out helps, right? Sometimes when you come way out, you see little odd imperfections that you can just kind of hit quickly. Man, that looks good though. Really think we've got a good looking image going there. All right. So now I think I'm happy overall with that dodge and burn job. We weren't in there forever. It's a plus. Let's come in here. Hold on just a little bit there. Just a little bit. This around. A little bit more. And we might just hit it with a little bit of color. Right here. Just kind of even that out just a little bit, color-wise. All right. So now we've got that done. Do I want to hit this just a little bit more in there? Just slightly. And I'm not trying to make it look fake, right? I don't want to completely smooth everything out down here. I might have just a little bit, but overall, I'm digging it. I like where it is. Hit this line just a little bit more there. Awesome. I think she looks pretty good. Just a smidge back down in here in her arm. There's a couple little blemishes I missed earlier, so I may actually create another layer towards the end and just kind of hit a couple of those little things. There's a little bit of an abrupt transition there that I want to try to soften up. Oh, shit, too much. There we go. Looks a little better. Dodge and burn really is a finesse thing that comes with time. It comes with understanding and looking at lots and lots of images and looking at it over and over and doing it over and over and over again. So if you're starting out with dodge and burn, don't get discouraged. I kind of did in the beginning. I didn't use it a lot for a while, and I've really gotten back into it. And it is uber useful for making your pictures look really good. You just got to be patient with it and understand that it is super, super subtle, the shifts. And as you do it more and more, you'll see it more and more. All right. So I like that. Now I'm going to run my own contrast stack that I have built. And it's just a series of curve layers, right? This is a base contrast curve set to luminosity blend mode, and it really pumps a lot of contrast back into images. There it is, pulled all the way back to 0. I mean, if you go all the way up to 100, you can see it's super crazy contrasty. I generally like somewhere between 20 and 30. That's just my own personal preference for styling purposes. Let me see here. I may actually go back down just a little bit so I don't lose as much in her hair. All right, yep. And then I have this layer I call spot focus. It's just what I named it. It's a levels layer. And I use this a lot to kind of create, not really a full-blown vignette, but to just kind of create an area to highlight in an image. So like her face and hair, oh shit, back, painted on the wrong layer. So we'll just kind of do this here, and you can see it's created a mask. And then what I'm going to do is I usually just increase the blacks a little bit, bring down the midtones, a smidge, 0.95 or so, and you can see it just kind of darkened everything around her face. So it really draws the eye into the face more. I may bring that opacity back slightly. I use this a lot in my boudoir work where I'm really trying to, where I've got more of a scene in there and I'm trying to really emphasize the subject, but it does it without creating an actual like vignette. But I like this. Now it's just kind of a subtle burn on the bottom and edges, and it toned down the highlights on her arm just a little bit too. So it really keeps the focus more on her face. Now I have this layer that's called eyes. Same thing. So this is where I go in and brighten the eyes up. Eyes are one of those things you can really, really mess up quick, fast, in a hurry, right? So I'm going to show you a couple tricks I have learned for this, or a trick, I guess. I don't really know if it would qualify as a couple of tricks, but a trick that I learned a while back from watching a Joel Grimes editing video, actually. When I first got started, I watched a lot of Joel Grimes stuff. All right, so I've created my mask around the eyes themselves so that that's all that's going to be targeted. And this is about to look a little crazy, but I promise there's a method. So I like to pull the highlights way back, lift the midtones, increase the blacks a little bit, so it's created more contrast and brightness. Now, obviously, that is way too much. So the trick is zoom way out like this where it's tiny, pull the opacity all the way down to look at what it normally looks like, and then slowly increase it. I have found somewhere between 25 and 30 is just a subtle enough increase. Now we're back at, fit to screen, on or off, on, off, on, off. It's very subtle. I could actually probably go back just a smidge more. And it brightened her eyes up. You can definitely see it right here in the sclera. It brightened them up. But when you look at it in a small factor like this, her eyes don't look glowing. They don't look alien. They don't look, they don't look like they're unnatural. And you can do it way out like this. You can see it just changes it a little bit. It might be hard to see on YouTube, but that's the trick. Zoom way out and then kind of mess with it, because it really does make a difference overall with what that looks like for the eyes. And you really just don't want to overdo the eyes. Now I have a layer called hair. So I have really found recently the easiest thing to do is just come use Adobe's selection tool, come up to select people here, and then it does a pretty damn good job of finding the hair, especially whenever you're on like a good portrait like this. Come on, pick the hair, hit apply, and look, it's created a pretty awesome hair mask overall. So you just come up here, hair, shift F5 will bring up the fill dialog, hit OK. And now I've created a hair mask that looks pretty damn good overall. You can see it did come in here and target the jacket just a little bit. So I'm going to clean that up real fast. Come in with a brush, with black, paint in where it doesn't need to be. And again, this mask doesn't have to be perfect. It's not like we're, clipping the hair out. We're just going to use this to create a little bit more contrast in the hair itself, so the hair pops a little bit. This is just, and you could do this with the clarity slider too, honestly, but I kind of like doing it this way. I think it, gives me a little bit more control, and you'll see what I mean here in just a minute. I'm gonna feather that mask a couple pixels just so there's no crazy transitions anywhere. All right, back out. So again, same kind of thing. It's a levels layer. I like to kind of pull the brightness and lift and then add in the blacks and kind of zoom out, turn the opacity way down or down to 0, and then just slowly start dialing it back in until it really gives me something. So right now it's at 67%. And you can see how how much of a pop it really added to that hair. I may dial it down just a little bit. That looks pretty good. Let me go down just to 30 or 31. Perfect. 35. It's just a subtle pop. It just brightens that hair up and gives you, brightens up the highlights a little bit in there, gives you some depth. It just really makes that hair look great. And now I'm going to come in here. I got one for lips, and I might even do a little bit with her teeth here, but I don't know yet. All right, so for lips, I found Adobe's mouth mask is so-so, but it really doesn't take that long to quick mask the pair of lips. So I'm just going to do it this way. Come in here, check my mask, see how it looks. And again, this is another levels layer. I like levels in these just because they're easy to control and mess with. You might like curves. Either one will do the same job pretty much. All right. Mask looks decent. All right. I have found a mid-range of 0.8 and a highlights of 220. It really gives the lips a lot of shape. You can see with it turned off, her lips are pretty, but they're a little flat. On, it really popped this highlight here, especially with the darker lipstick. It created a lot more dimension. Now, we may need to dial that back just a little bit. It might be too strong, so I'm going to take it all the way down to 0, start increasing it in until I like the look. Right there, 75%, I think looks really good overall. Feels like that sclera right there is a little bright. So what I'm going to do is actually go back to the eyes mask, put my brush to black, set the flow to 10%, and I'm just going to kind of come in and paint over the top of that mask slightly. Check it. Yeah, it just knocked down that sclera just a little bit. And I'm going to do one more levels layer, change the blend mode to luminosity, invert the layer, and I'm going to call this one teeth. And I'm going to up her teeth just a smidge. And it may be too much, and I may not like it, but we're going to play with it real quick and see what we come up with. All right, so come in here, paint. No, damn it. Make sure you select the mask and not just a random layer, because otherwise it'll start painting in color, which gets a little annoying. Damn it. All right. Boom. Painted the teeth in here. Do I want to target these little ones? Yeah, let's see. I don't think I'm going to need to desaturate them. She's got pretty white teeth going on, but maybe we just want to bring them up a little bit. Pop the highlights, bring the mids up slightly. Let's back it out. Let's drop that all the way down. Brought it up about 50%. Even that feels a little aggressive. Let's go down to 45. There. I think that's balanced there. All right. And then they've recently added where you can do a clarity and dehaze layer, but I'm so used to doing it in Camera Raw, and sometimes I play with some of the other curve sliders that I'm just going to stamp the layer again, convert to Smart Object, and then I'm just going to go into Camera Raw. Maybe right around 5. This is kind of like my last little punch here. 5 and 5 on clarity and dehaze. And then sometimes I'll kind of pull the shadows up here, pull the darks back down a little bit, increase the lights slightly. Hit OK. Change the blend mode to luminosity so it doesn't mess with my colors. And then I'm just going to kind of go and dial it in until it gives me the contrast pop that I like. It's there, just a little bit of contrast. Let me bring that down to 33. And that just kind of popped everything just a little bit. Overall, I think that might be it. So let's look at the original to there, back to the original to there. There's a couple little red spots I think I'm going to clean up. Oh yeah, and I remembered there were a couple of blemishes on the arm. So again, Control Shift Alt N creates you just a brand new blank layer. It's just the quick way to do it. Yep. Looks like a dead pixel right there. I'm going to come in and just clean off these couple little blemishes on her arm. Again, they were super subtle. Probably won't even notice them at like Instagram size. But I'm editing on a big ass 32-inch 4K monitor, so I kind of see everything. It's a blessing and a curse. Let's back out. All right, so we clean that up there. A little mole here. A little freckle, I meant. There and there. All right. Last thing I'm going to do, hue and saturation layer. Let's invert that. And come over here. There's just a little bit of redness in this spot on our arm over here. There, and we'll come to red. We're going to shift the hue. Usually I found shift up 9 and desaturate a little bit. And then I come over here and just mess with the opacity and blend it until it looks right. I think I'm fine with that. And then I'm also going to come just a smidge there. So again, hue up around 9, 10, saturation, desaturate it just a little bit. You can see it turned her nose green, but we're going to turn that all the way down and then just kind of slowly build it back in right at like 18%. Just took some of that red out of her nostrils. Might turn the lightness back just a little bit, down to like -5. Which is super subtle once it's blended there. You know what? I think one last thing I'm going to do. Let's come in here to clarity and dehaze layer. I really like this eyeshadow. It's super funky. So I think we're going to just make that pop just a little bit. I think clarity and dehaze is how I want to make it pop. Maybe not. Might not be the exact thing that I want to use. Come on, pay attention, Photoshop. There we go. But it might just be perfect. So let's see what happens. Come in with clarity. I really brought those highlights up. Oh yeah, slide dehaze up some. All right, let's go all the way down with it. Start building it back in. There we go. Yeah, I like that. Super subtle, but I think that'll do it. I don't think I'm gonna worry about some of the strays back here or up here. Honestly, with this hairstyle, I think they fit. I think with the frizzy kind of curly thing she's got going on, I think if I got rid of all that back there, I just don't think it would look right. So overall, I think that's good. I think we are where we should be. So fit the screen. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty awesome looking photo, right? I mean, really did a lot with it. Again, if you want to see it, fit screen. That's where we started with this whole image. That's where we ended. So I feel like it's definitely retouch, but I don't feel like it was overdone. I don't think it's too heavy-handed. I think we got rid of a lot of the distractions in the image. And overall, man, I think that's a pretty cool photo. All right, guys. Well, that was a full edit. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I know it was probably a pretty long video, but I really do like to get in and work on the little tiny details whenever I edit an image from the ground up. I got to use a couple of Nino's new actions, so that was really cool. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, leave it in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.